What do you think of when you hear the term masterpiece? You probably think of the Mona Lisa, Citizen Kane, the CW Flash TV show. What you would probably not say is a small and obscure comic on Webtoons. But today, I'm here to cover just that. Spanning nearly 2 years and taking up a total of 36 chapters, Patrik Falls Down the Pit is a true work of art. And here's why. Bum 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 bum. Ba-da-na-na-na-na. Let's start from the very beginning. Now, this might look like merely a simplistic drawing to the uneducated and dull of mind, but if you look deeper, you will see the subtle details that show the genius of what is to come. First, we see this strange creature, who we assume to be Squidward from the show SpongeBob. Notice the details in their face, the pure rage and malice they hold. Now see Patrik on the edge, the need to run and get away evident in his eyes. And if we look closer at that ledge, we see what looks to be a bird in it, foreshadowing what's to come. Now look at the bottom of the frame. The sand looks like it's about to bleed out, escape, just like Patrik wants to. As we move on, we see this thing push Patrik off, taking a chunk of cliff with him. The prologue outer frame fades away and is replaced by a pure blue background. We see Patrik falling and falling and falling, the blue merging together to create a true sense of the magnitude of this drop. Patrik gets a parachute. In section 2 of this story, we start with Patrik falling in the exact same position as he was previously. Then it happens, a parachute spawns out of Patrik, using up part of his being in the process. You can see what is shown to be anger or pain here, as his side is ripped off to create a cord. And suddenly we see it on his face, a sense of relief as the parachute spreads out and slows his fall. But just as suddenly as it came, it went, as a bird pecked a hole straight through the parachute, and he fell again. Now, I don't want to waste too much time and explain the obvious biblical connotations of this, so I will move on and save the analysis for later. Patrik gets hit by a plane. As Patrik falls, a plane comes into frame, but something immediately feels off. The sense of scale is wrong. That feeling of wrongness is soon justified as we see Patrik crash into the window of the plane, the pilot exclaiming, "What the? I can't see. We are crash." And thus, like everything else in this story, it is pulled down by the crushing weight of Patrik. Then something odd happens. A strange image is shown. One of a building exploding, an obvious metaphor for how lack of sight can cause us to create tragedies, and a blatant commentary on war. Also, notice the use of "we" is crash, insinuating multiple people on that plane, multiple people who are now dead. War is hell. This is the first sign of the political shift this comic will take. Patrik falls through Columbia. This is a strange one. We see Patrik falling as usual. Then, suddenly, there is a sharp cutoff. We see Patrik falling past a floating city. Then, and this is very important, the city calls out saying, "What the?" Patrik, showing a sense of recognition and surprise, like this place knows Patrik, and yet he continues to fall, showing no sign of hearing what was said to him, or just ignoring it. One of the shortest comics, but also one of the most intriguing. Patrik meets a friendly whale. This chapter of the series is particularly open to interpretation. We see Patrik falling towards a vast open ocean. Then, from below, a mighty whale leaps up. I would like to draw your attention to the little details that make this great. Look at the art style of Patrik and the whale. Notice how Patrik looks like he doesn't belong here, and how the whale fits nearly seamlessly into the background. This makes an incredibly interesting parallel, and when the whale blows Patrik upwards and away from the ocean, we see it done in Patrik's art style. But why is this whale considered friendly? Does it know something Patrik doesn't? A reason why Patrik shouldn't reach the ground? We will soon find out. A quick update. LOL. There is no art without the artist. Can't have a Mona Lisa without a Da Vinci. So it will come as no surprise that the creator of this masterpiece, Mr. Bushperson, would reveal himself. They act humbly, thanking the readers of this comic for 1,000 views and advertising their YouTube, even apologizing if anyone found this post inconvenient, but I would expect nothing less from the maker of this art. Also, they did pretty well, goddamn. Another masterpiece I see. Part 2. Patrik falls through time. We see Patrik fall through a scene from the American Civil War, a clear parallel to the anti-war sentiments expressed a few chapters prior. A few small but incredibly subtle details are in this scene. See that canon? It is hundreds of years out of date before the Civil War, thus showing how much time has truly collapsed in on itself. You might also think having a part 2 without a part 1 is a play on this as well, like the chapters are also skipping through time. However, this is not the case, and is instead an unfortunate tragedy that will be explained later on. Patrik meets an Italian plumber. Patrik falls into a floating pipe and gets taken to a scene that I can only assume is from Super Mario Maker, given the time limit. First of all, we see Mario being killed by Bowser with a fire blast. I'm not too sure what this could mean. Could it be a political statement, an Italian, an obvious representation of fascism, being killed by the flames? Is this a commentary on religion, a recreation of hell? Is this Italian plumber doomed to be stuck like this for all eternity? Almost like Patrik is right now. But Patrik, he doesn't belong here. Look at the backgrounds. See the scan lines? Enveloping everything but Patrik, and thus he leaves out the pipe, which for some reason has clouds on it, and back into the void of the forever fall. Patrik falls into a nuclear warhead. Patrik, and you won't believe this, soon falls into a nuclear warhead. A stunning surprise. The number 37 plastered on the end. Possibly a countdown, or a reference to RDS-37, the Soviet Union's first two-stage hydrogen bomb. Just as Patrik falls upon it, we see an explosion. The exact same explosion as the chapter Patrik gets hit by a plane. An interesting way of comparing war and nuclear arms. And at the very bottom of the page, we see the author apologizing for an upcoming break that they will take. I completely understand this, as art takes a long time to make, and to refine your craft to this caliber undoubtedly takes its mental toll. Patrik falls into Hubla's mouth and exits into the ocean. After all the commentary on war, it is no surprise we are back to the religious undertones that permeate through this entire story. And oh boy, this is a strange one. We see Patrik being consumed by this monstrous creature that we can only assume to be Hubla. Help! Ah. I am consumed. Ah. Not consumable. Ah. We see these strange diagrams of Patrik going through the fish's body. A metaphor for rebirth, possibly? Buddhism, maybe? But we cannot be sure. Then we see Patrik get ejected out into the ocean. Bubbles then rise him up from the ocean floor, so close to what would have been the end of his fall, but not quite. Then, and this is interesting, the friendly whale from a few episodes earlier appears once again and launches Patrik up. This is strange, okay? I'll admit it. There's a lot of meaning to be taken here, but I have no idea what this is about. I'll just leave it up for interpretation right now. Another update. Hello dudes, it has just came to my attention that Webtoon has removed 2 episodes of this series without telling me. These episodes were Patrik Falls Down the Bottomless Pit Part 1 and Patrik Meets a Familiar Friend. Keep in mind that they did not tell me why or when these episodes were removed. My apologies, Mr. Bushperson. In 48 BC, a tragedy struck all knowledge in the world. The Library of Alexandria was burned to the ground, taking countless manuscripts with it. Are these 2 events comparable? No, because who gives a shit about some old scrolls? Who knows what sort of philosophy was lost in these 2 texts? We might never know. Gone forever, reduced to ashes, never to feel the touch of human eyes on them again. The world is a cruel place. Patrik falls through a portal and transforms into a sponge. We see Patrik fall into a strange purple portal. As light glows from within it, he is transported into a world of patterns, more specifically fractal patterns spreading out into the infinity, all symbolizing Patrik's forever fall into this weird, unearthly sky. There's a strange feeling knowing that any one of these branches could be traveled down, and it would go on forever. So it is strange that this infinity is brought to an end so soon, as in the very next frame, we don't see Patrik, but someone else, a sponge. Imagine you are immortal. You don't need to breathe, you don't need to drink, you are invincible from everything. You live your life, countless people come and go. You love some, you hate some, but in the end, after thousands of years, you cannot remember a single name. Millions of years pass, societies rise and fall, ships are sent to the darkest parts of the universe. It feels like mere seconds to someone like you. An entire galaxy can feel as boring as your childhood home. No rock left unturned, no cranny left unexplored. Billions of years pass. The stars slowly start to wink out. It feels like you lose a friend each time. The only things that have stayed constant all these years are now gone. Trillions upon trillions of years pass. It is you, the only thing that has not faded into the nothingness. So I must ask the question, is that really you? The one who lived all those years ago? Octillions of eons ago? Every aspect of your personality has changed. No semblance of what you once were remains. Does it matter? Now do you see the meaning of this? The beauty and sadness in it? Patrik hits a trampoline. We see Patrik falling as always. The frame slowly zooms out and we see a trampoline beneath him. Yet, as he hits it, it does not bounce him up like the whale did. It bounces him towards the side. This feels wrong. Something is up here. The sides of the sky seem to fold in on themselves as he hurtles to the right, a clear rejection of the friendly whale's goals of pushing him up. What could this mean for a beloved hero? I mean, it can't be that bad, right? Patrik falls through hell. As Patrik falls, a red portal opens up beneath him. As he enters the portal, we see another fractal pattern, but this one feels wrong. The sides are cut off, revealing a white background, the same white background that was shown slightly earlier. This is a false infinity, and as Patrik falls through the red void that has now taken over his very being, we see the torment he is going through, being cut in half by the own reality he inhabits. Yet there is a strange detail I would like to call attention to. Notice the small specks of blue that are by his side, showing us that Patrik is still connected to the sky in some way. Then, what I can only assume to be a wizard looks at him, and a second later, zaps Patrik with a bolt of energy. Poof! And just like that, Patrik has left hell and is back to his fall. I've not touched on it as much as I believe I should have, but religiosity has been a core part of this comic from the very start. But this, I believe, is an end to that. This symbolizes Patrik's loss of belief in religion. Patrik saw hell and he did not want to follow any god that allowed it, so he stopped believing. It might not seem like much now, but if you go through this entire comic, the amount of religious sentiment and imagery dwindles to nearly nothing. A controversial but powerful message. But without religion, what will Patrik's purpose be? What will fill that hole where meaning used to house? Patrik wakes up. We start as we always do. Then, strangely, we see this poof image, the exact same one as Patrik falls through hell. But while that time he came from literal hell, this time we see something different. He wakes up. Ah, where am I? Why am I falling? Ah, this is truly strange. It is almost as if Patrik is suddenly aware of his situation in a way he never was previously. Then, black, and right after that, 10.31.20. What could this mean? 10.31.20. It's all stopping. No more, no more. 10.31.20. 1.1.21. 12.15.20, 10.31.20, gone for those who knew, undone, 10.31.20. The binary on the top translates to follow. The Latin on the bottom translates to remember you must die. In the comments we have, I know binary code by heart because I love math and it. And splat. What could this mean? 24H15M. Read the comment. Read the title. We have these two phrases. What comes after jumping off the cliff? In original Webdings, this says, Mr. Bush person was here. And on the bottom, it says, October's the day, psych, Webdings, woohoo, font. Philosophical. Very philosophical. Important in the comments. Gora table vase internet to first letter of every word. This spells out gavity. What could this mean? It was hard work decoding this, I'm not gonna lie. I had to use my genius level IQ and a little bit of how do I phrase this? Slave labor, but it was all worth it. In the end, because this lore can only be seen by the most devout fans, and now I know it. I believe one of the most powerful messages here is, what comes after jumping off a cliff? What does come after jumping off a cliff? You can answer this literally, looking at the chapter before, and say splat, truly reminding us that time is strange in this place, and answers are even stranger. Patrik falls, season finale. We see Patrik falling as usual. Then, as we zoom out, we see something. The ground. That's right, I want to repeat that. The ground. And nothing stops Patrik as he hits it with a plop. Season 2, coming soon. Ooh, sub to me on YouTube, Mr. Bush person. What could this mean for the story? The very premise of Patrik falls down the pit is now over. What goals are there left to be achieved? In the comments, we see the quote, Patrik becomes Flatrick, a beautiful play on words that not only flow like a poem, but also highlights Patrik's current predicament. The series returns. Patrik is falling. Nothing has changed. It is the same frame as before. The same one we have seen time and time again. Why? Why, after all this build-up, the emotional journey Mr. Bush person put us on, we would end up back here? It is not fair, just like it is not fair for Patrik to be back here as well. I want to give you a heads up. This comic is about to become fairly political. It should come as no surprise that after tackling something as controversial as religion, Mr. Bush person would go after this as well. We see Patrik fall into a war zone. We have what can only be assumed as rebels attempting to take down a cracked and shattered building, which on top of, there are pigs in military equipment. An obvious call-out of fascism. Yet, this slingshot appears empty. No one is brave enough to take a stand to this authority, to take down the broken tower of glass and lies. As Patrik falls, he stops in the slingshot, and a second later he is sent off at record speeds. Anger, for the first time ever, shows on his face as he hurtles towards the building, reducing it to rubble. A clear and obvious statement on Patrik's views. We see an update from Mr. Bush person apologizing for the long break. I can understand why this took months to make. The sheer emotion put into this. I'm not angry at all with them. Patrik hits a hot air balloon. While Patrik is falling, we see him come up on a hot air balloon. As he plops onto it, I want you to notice exactly who is in it. The sponge. The sponge from earlier. You might remember them from the Infinity episode. Could this be Patrik, changed from a finite infinity, learning and finally rising upwards, a rejection of everything he once was? Patrik begins to slip, and as he falls off, we see the look of dismay and sadness on his face. But he does not fall into the blue sky like you would expect. He falls into a dark void. Could this be symbolism for how this Patrik has not changed? How he is not pure enough to rise up? Still a little bit of religious undertones remain. Patrik witnesses a murder. I want to give a small content warning on this because it is quite disturbing. As Patrik falls, we see him come across a giant airship. As he plops onto it, we see this grisly scene. A man in a red top hat stands over the body of a light blue individual. Could this represent a caricature of the upper class? How they are literally killing the common man in the lap of inconceivable luxury and fortune. Also, now there are borders around the edges. Could this represent Patrik's feelings of confinement? Or maybe something else. As Patrik is falling, he soon notices something. A strange creature comes up to him. The motherfucking sponsor dragon! The Sprite logo is plastered across its wings, an obvious brand placement. And I mean, what brand wouldn't want to be affiliated with this masterpiece? I'm actually gonna go out and get a Sprite right now. Oh, wait. Never mind. Fuck Sprite. I would straight up rather drink a bowl of cola than a Sprite. Patrik lands on top of it, and the Sprite dragon says that he is too heavy and kicks him off. As Patrik falls, we see black bars around him to truly highlight the sense of betrayal he feels, a blatant show of how corporations will hurt and cut off anything if it slows them down even a little bit. Patrik gets hit by a train. Patrik falls, and he soon sees a train. As it chugs toward him, we see the logo train system on it. As the train hits Patrik and sends him flying off, the frame zooms out and we see many things. First of all, we see a man on a motorcycle following this train, wearing a beautiful bowler hat, so I can only assume that they are the good guy trying to stop this evil train. Next, as Patrik gets rocketed up, we see an advertisement saying sub to Hacky for... Oh, wait, sorry, I misread that. It says sub to Mr. Bush person, and right next to that, an unreadable advertisement in red. Undoubtedly, this is all a critique on how incredibly useful infrastructure like trains are corrupted by corporatism and greed, and how that negatively impacts people who rely on them. A comic truly ahead of its time. Patrik hits a landmine. We start with Patrik falling, as always. Then, what can only be assumed is a mine appears under Patrik. The most important part of this scene is the background. Notice the company buildings on the side. Furby Inc. Patrik falls down the pit, and the chair store by chair. These are all obviously twisted abominations of neoliberal capitalism. Chair store by chair. This is a world that only exists to sell products. All the buildings in it are advertisements for whatever is being sold for consumption. It is strange and wrong, but we get a glimmer of hope as Patrik hurtles towards the mine. Maybe he will defeat this world once and for all. A second of tension, then boom, but the buildings are undamaged. This world is left to fester in its current state. A sad but realistic commentary on those who want to change the world and are willing to sacrifice anything for that change, but wind up doing nothing. Patrik goes through a black hole. Plus updates. Patrik falls, and soon, you won't believe this, he comes across a black hole. We see him get sucked in, and the screen fades to black, with only some white text on it. 10 episodes. 10 episodes remain. We are this close to a definitive end in this saga. And by this text, we have Patrik in the WARHEAD. Patrik gets saved by a mysterious man. Falling as always, one day, Patrik nears a volcano. As he is about to fall in, we cut to Magnet Man, a man who has magnets for hands. Then we get an x-ray of Patrik, revealing every part of his being, and we see something strange. A hunk of metal. Could this be shrapnel from the story Patrik lands on a mine? Just as Patrik is about to fall into the lava, Magnet Man zaps Patrik towards him. Right as he grabs Patrik, he throws him up nearly immediately. What could this mean? Who's Magnet Man? What is his purpose? Why did he save Patrik? Mr. Bush person will explain this in the comments, I'm sure. Probably nothing to worry about. Patrik gets hit into space, Patrik falls, and soon he comes across a rocket ship. The logo Massa plastered on it. As Patrik clings onto it, he hurtles upwards, leaving the blue sky behind for the stars of space. But then disaster. Houston, we have a problem. Patrik and his weight pull the ship down. We have seen this happen time and time again, and I believe this doesn't represent Patrik's physical weight, but instead the weight of his sins, preventing him from going upwards and towards salvation. Disaster as the rocket ship explodes, presumably killing everybody on board. These people's dreams reduced to nothing. These people's lives reduced to ash. This gives a horrifying meaning to the past panel's use of prepare yourself for death. That's what it meant. A realistic reminder that the time we have on this earth is limited and finite, and can end at any moment. Announcement: we have a merch link in the creator notes and comments. Well, don't mind if I do. Oh man, a phone case. I would love this. This looks cool. How much does it cost? Ooh. Now, this poster looks great. I want it on my wall. I sure do wish there was some way I could afford it. Patreon. Man, I sure like money. And looking at these benefits, you should go here. You could get your name in yellow. You will be gifted a PNG at $100 a month. It's a great investment for your future. Just head on over to the link in the description. Woo! Patrik breaks a bridge. Patrik falls, and as he does, he spots a bridge. Could this be it? Salvation from the fall? An ending to the drop? As Patrik angles towards it, he says, "Maybe I'll stop falling if I land on the bridge." And right as he hits it, snap. The bridge breaks, taking our hopes with it. The comic stays on this frame, one of a broken bridge, truly showing us the devastation Patrik must feel after getting this hope in his chest, only for it to be snapped away. We are then shown the same image of Patrik falling as always. Truly, nothing has changed. Patrik hits a firework. The return. We see Patrik fall, but this time there is no blue sky above him. It is dark. As he falls, the frame zooms out to show us how truly small he is, giving us a real sense of scale and how isolated Patrik truly is. Then, out of nowhere, we see 3 rockets come at him. "I'm gonna explode. Help," Patrik says. Notice the use of the speech bubble around these words, highlighting them. A beautiful contrast with the background to show Patrik is still defiant, and that his words will not fade into the blank sky. Then boom, the rockets explode on him, blanketing the sky in an orange flame. It is worrying for a second that we can't see Patrik. Could this be the end? Then, like a piece of shrapnel, Patrik rockets past, and he continues his fall once again. Patrik falls into a cave. As Patrik falls, he soon sees the entrance of a cave. As he falls in this very big cave, he meets a spider that appears to know him. Patrik, for some reason, seems scared of this spider. As he falls past, we get a good look at the beautiful backgrounds of this cave. Water flowing and stalactites forming over this drop. Really top tier stuff. Then Patrik meets a skeleton who says, "Yeah, what could the meaning of this be? Is there no death in this cave? Is everyone who dies in it still conscious as their flesh rots away, doomed to be trapped for all eternity?" Dark stuff, in direct contrast to the beauty of this cave. As Patrik falls, he nears an exit, and he says, "Freedom." Could this mean that this cave is a trap? Or is it a sign that Patrik has accepted his predicament, that he no longer views his fall as something to get out of, but as a freedom he never had before? A true arbiter of Patrik's growth as a character. Patrik wakes up. Patrik wakes up. Patrik wakes up. Patrik falls as Patrik wakes up. There is Patrik wakes up. Season 2 finale coming soon. What could this mean? Patrik hits a trampoline. It is a normal day as Patrik falls. Nothing appears to be wrong. Then Patrik starts to fall downwards towards a trampoline, calling back to the trampoline from 22 episodes earlier that sent him to hell. Strange text starts to pop up on the clouds and on the sky, the loop. Then the world starts glitching around Patrik. Colors change and disappear from reality itself. Something is clearly wrong. Then, as Patrik hits the trampoline, it sends him not up, but to the side. Errors plastering the sky. The final fall. Finale. Patrik wakes up in a chair, the exact same setting as in the chapter Patrik Wakes Up. As he leaves the house, he says, "Why am I back here? I need to find Squidward." Notice the text saying Squiddard. This is an intentional choice, foreshadowing that what Patrik is searching for is off in some way, that something is wrong. As he comes up on the cliff where this incident first happened, notice how part of it is still missing from the time he was pushed off. He should be angry, but Patrik, poor naive Patrik, forgives him, forgives Squiddard, because he is his friend. Squiddard, that is not the one who he searched for. This is someone else entirely. We see this creature, Squiddard, sneak up on Patrik, us as the reader feeling a sense of pain as Patrik talks about how much he misses him, unknowing of the threat that's looming. As he calls out his name, Patrik says, "OMG, Squid Wad," with a happy look on his face. I will give my theory onto why Patrik says his name like this in a little bit. Squidard then says, "How did the loop break?" to a confused Patrik. Then yelling, they say, "You're not supposed to be here." A bit off topic, but I would like to point out a small error, you know. It ain't much, but it's the only one I could find. This is the wrong "you're." Patrik says, "Squidard," in confusion, and with the most cruel look on his face, Squidard pushes Patrik off the cliff. Patrik's nose breaking the frame to show how much this broke him. We cut to Squidard's point of view, Patrik with a look of betrayal and pain on his face as he falls downwards. "No, why?" Now we are back to Squidard's house, where he says, "Okay, Patrik's loop is working again. I don't know how he escaped the dream," all while watching Patrik fall on the TV. Okay, here's my theory. On this final frame, look closely. Notice how the text cuts off and a little line cracking through the world. I believe Squidard is actually a reality bender. Or Patrik is in hell, being tormented by an eldritch being, forcing Patrik into an eternity of torment for his own amusement. This not only lines up with the themes of infinity present throughout the entire story, it also makes sense of the fact that Squidard's name was constantly changing throughout the story, an effect of his powers. The ending is particularly cruel, as it happens just as Patrik comes to peace with his fall, right after he proclaimed freedom. So, to reset his suffering and the loop, Squidard took him out and put him back in. A cruel, cruel fate. The end. Whole thing explanation in the comments. What the? Okay, so this is actually an elaborate ruse by Mr. Bush person that highlights the meta themes in this text. This will be thoroughly explained in part 2 of this series. Well, I'm off.